Greetings everyone, BJ Weiler here, back once again with another awesome sauce episode of Awesome Sauce for Games, episode 12. In this episode, we are tackling the issue, we're talking about the issue of, yes, Elder Scrolls Online is going free to play. Yes, Elder Scrolls Online will be free to play. Now, that being said, it's not going free to play anytime soon. But we'll get into that in just a moment. Also, in this episode, we're going to be continuing a little bit of a talk. We started with episode 11 in regards to the death of the MMO, which, of course, as we said last episode, is nowhere near the case. But we will talk about some of the changes to the MMO over the last decade that the genre has been active and quite popular, and why people may think the MMO is dead to them. Continuing that discussion a little bit, but first, yes, Elder Scrolls Online. So if you're following any bit of this gaming news, or if you're playing Elder Scrolls, you have this topic certainly has been on your mind, and in fact has been on the mind of many people since Elder Scrolls was pretty much announced. And we finally found out about a year or so ago what business model the game would be using, which would be subscription only with a cash shop attached, not unlike World of Warcraft has at the moment. But through this past year, the whole game has been up since it was released in April. Been lots and lots of talk about free to play. You go to the Facebook, the Elder Scrolls Facebook page, and pretty much every day someone brings up the topic of free to play. Well, it has gotten really ramped up here the last month or so due to a couple of what would seemingly be innocuous things happening to the game or around the game itself, the business model. First of which is, we'll go to this Kotaku page here. New sign that Elder Scrolls might go free to play. Now, this is from December 30th. So this popped up in light of ZeniMax getting rid of the free to play option here. So as you can see, Elder Scrolls Online, or not their 6-month subscription, I should say, excuse me, did away with its 6-month subscription option. A change that the MMO's developer and publisher have had very little to say about publicly so far, and at this point they really haven't said that much about it either, aside from the fact that they did because it didn't seem to be popular out of the subscription options that there were. That was basically from the developer saying that it was the least popular of the subscription options that they've had the current player base opt in for. Most of the player base seems to be doing 1 month or 3 months. So, again, rather innocuous, but of course, any justification to banter about the free-to-play argument. So that's pretty much what that article is about. Nixing the half-year subscription, and of course the timing, because the timing with this is also a delay with the console releases yet again. So for those of you who might not know, Elder Scrolls Online, like Defiance, is supposed to be a multi-platform MMO. It was released on PC first back in April of 2014, and the console versions were supposed to follow up shortly thereafter in June of 2014. Now, they have been continually delayed, and the reason the developers have been given for delaying this are basically technical reasons with adapting the game to the console versions, which, in my mind, is a bunch of BS. Because if you already had your release dates planned, you planned to release in PC for April 4th, or April whatever it was, what day, April 2014, and console versions 2 months later, you pretty much had that game ready. ZeniMax pretty much had that game ready for the console versions, and it's not like they were ready for the previous gen, the Xbox 360 and the PS3. They, from the start of development, were going with PS4 and Xbox One. So technical issues, no, I'm not really buying that. Yes, there may have been some minor technical issues, but the bulk of that game was ready for release at June 2014. Because there's no way you're reporting or redoing a game of this magnitude in 2 months. So the game was pretty much ready for console release. They just delayed it for obvious reasons. Of course, the PC launch was less than spectacular. A lot of bugs and stuff, which is natural. I mean, it's part of being the MMO. It's part of being an MMO player. What you expect, buggy releases, launches that are not that great. But that being aside, so a delay, of course, would be natural to get the initial kinks worked out of the game. No problem there. So I was expected to be later on, like this past fall or this past winter, would be the next release date. I don't think there was ever a firm release date after that June release date was missed. They're just saying they kept delayed it. I know there was talk about fall or winter to get them released, but I don't think ever a really firm date was ever pressed into the cement there, so to speak. So, but regardless, again, recent news again this past month or so that the console dates have been pushed back into this year. The next sort of date we are looking at is sometime next month, February, because I believe Microsoft and or Amazon had the dates up on their sites, which were quickly taken down, of course. So again, pure speculation that they would be released, that Elder Scrolls will hit the console versions in February. So it's up in the air when the console versions will actually ever be released, if at all. There's also a very distinct possibility that console versions will not be released at all. There's a tinfoil theory going around that since the release of the game that there was never really any intention to port it to the consoles. It was just part of the marketing, and they're just quietly going to let that slide away and just focus on the PC version. I don't buy in that too much. I expect we will see Elder Scrolls Online on both Xbox One and PS4 sometime this year. No doubt, I would imagine it would be sometime this spring, because their current excuse for not releasing it at this point, or what you could use as the current excuse, is that they're working on a change to the system. I forget what it is off the top of my head. Some sort of championship system or conquest system, something like that. A major change, addition to the game, feature to the game that they want basically to have ready to go as soon as the console versions spin up. So that'll be already in game, ready to go when they do their console releases. So, of course, being delayed in console, the thinking is, well, they're just getting ready for free to play before they hit the consoles. Not likely. Truth be told, delaying the console versions. I mean, the most likely theory for these delays in the console versions, although some of the excuses they gave may be legitimate, you know what? The primary reason is because it gives them an opportunity to push off the move to free to play. For probably at least another year or two. They'll be able to get another year or two of life out of the game as a subscription model once it hits the consoles, because you got a lot of console players that are waiting for this to occur. So, that being said, as I mentioned earlier, yes, Elder Scrolls Online will be free to play. Will it be anytime soon? No. They have already prepared with the cash shop, so they're ready. They can just flip a switch and be free to play. So essentially, these console delays in the console version is just to delay that move to free to play as long as possible. So I don't expect Elder Scrolls Online to be free to play for at least another couple of years at least. So no worry about that. But again, another reason for some of these theories. let's get over here. There we go. Now we can see it a little bit better. Is this PC Gamer article where Elder Scrolls Online is being reportedly removed from retail shelves amid, again, the rumors. This is from January 8th, this PC Gamer article. Here we go. EB Games has sent a statement to MCV. This is an update to this article anyway, saying that there's nothing untoward about the Elder Scrolls Online recall. So essentially what was happening, let me move back over here. Hello. So essentially what was happening was that basically, as is normal in the retail business, things go on clearance, or things are sent back to the manufacturers or the vendors, and are no longer sold in a retail store. Absolutely nothing unusual about this, but for some reason in the gaming world it is used as an excuse to say the game is failing, the game is dead. No, as this update that EB Games put out says, this is completely normal. It happens with DVDs, it happens with music, happens with games. I mean, it happens with pillows, for crying out loud. Retailers send pillows back to the vendors. Doesn't mean that particular manufacturer or vendor is going out of business. So again, put this rumor to rest. It's a lot of BS. It is not going free to play because Elder Scrolls Online is being removed from the shelves. The game is almost a year old. And as we all know, can observe, if we use a little bit of common sense in the retail world, is that the retail is always constantly recycling or cycling through product. If you go to your retailer now, you will notice there's probably swimwear, summerwear, that kind of stuff going out into the major retailers right now. And here we are, January, the dead of winter. This is just how retail works. Do not worry about it. As I said, we've got a couple of years before we have to worry about Elder Scrolls Online going free to play. So put those rumors to rest. It's a bunch of BS, just typical stuff. Typical stuff that happens in the gaming community. Now, that being said, that out of the way, what about the MMO in general being dead? As we said last week, no, it is not dead. The MMO genre is not going anywhere. However, some people feel that the MMO genre is in a state of decline, despite the fact that we've got more people playing MMOs than ever before. We've got more MMOs out in the wild than ever before, and pretty much the majority of them are doing okay for themselves. Not great, some of them. Others are doing fantastic, but regardless, the MMO is a sustainable genre. We have several sustainable business models within that genre, and we have plenty upon plenty of games that are quite profitable and doing very nicely for themselves with the player base they have. So, now, as we said last week, the MMO is not dead, but let's talk about this change in the genre. We've seen some paradigm shifts, naturally. Biggest one, the most recent one, is this shift in the gaming community of desiring free-to-play games, desiring to get rid of this antiquated, some would say, subscription model, and being able to choose when we pay and how much we pay for a game we are playing. So obviously that has been the latest paradigm shift, but really that shift would not have been possible without one major overarching change that happened to the genre, and that is the wowification of the MMO genre. And of course that is the changes that Blizzard brought into the genre with their game World of Warcraft. Essentially, what Blizzard did with World of Warcraft was make the genre accessible to a non-hardcore gamer. It basically made MMOs mainstream. Some people would say, of course it dumbed down content in order to make it accessible to people who wouldn't normally play these type of games. Now that may be true on some aspect, but that doesn't necessarily mean obviously it's not a bad thing, because the genre is more popular and profitable And quite frankly, without the WoWification of the genre, we wouldn't be playing MMOs today. We still might have one or two. EverQuest still might be going, things like that. But essentially, the genre would indeed be dead if it wasn't for Blizzard and WoW. So those of you old school MMO players, of which I could be considered part of it, since I've been playing them for well over the time that World of Warcraft has been in existence. I wasn't a heavy MMO player, but it was something I dabbled in every now and again. Um, we would basically be playing our single player games with the multiplayer options. I mean, essentially, that's what we would be playing without the WoWification of the genre. Now, of course, this has led to some changes. This has led to many debates within the genre, some of which we have tackled right here on Awesome Sauce for Games, such as the free-to-play versus subscription models, such as the theme park versus sandbox question, the hardcore versus casual debate, all of which we have already tackled on previous episodes here. Be sure to check them out. So we're not going to rehash a lot of that stuff here, but what we will be talking about is this change from basically a hardcore genre to something that is more accessible. Now, making something more accessible does not necessarily mean dumbing it down. Does it mean necessarily that the multiple hours, the 4 or 5 hour raids with 40 players all getting together to take down this massive, huge boss at the end of this dungeon or whatever, is in decline, is no longer desired? Yeah, more than likely. I mean, just looking at things the way they are now, even looking at World of Warcraft, which, had all these big old raids, and seeing how less popular they have become over time, yes, indeed, there are certain things in this genre which are in decline, which are no longer in demand simply because of the time factor. Simply because gamers nowadays have little time to be able to spend not only in that 4 to 5 hour block trying to get a raid together, trying to get through this raid successfully, but actually the time outside of that spent preparing, spent learning your skills, spent gearing up your character. All that other stuff can be also included in this part of the time to be a hardcore raider. So yes, that obviously is in decline, as is PvP. PvP is a very small, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, is a niche type format. Like raiding is a niche type format. So it's not very popular because it takes time. And time is something us gamers no longer have. Us gamers who started this whole industry of the computer role-playing game, yes, we have matured. We have realized that the things we like to do back when we were younger had plenty of time on our hands. Yeah, no, that's not really what's important in life anymore. But again, making something accessible does not necessarily mean it is dumbed down. Just because we are not spending 4 to 5 hours in raid content does not mean that anything less than that is dumbed down or is any easier. Now, yes, of course, you can pick out pieces of content, say, hey, this game has got this raid, it's much easier than a 40-man raid. Yes, of course, there is always going to be those types of examples. WildStar, however, on the other hand, sort of went the other way. They went hardcore, and of course, as we can see, they are not doing so well with that subject. So again, another reason why hardcore is not really desired by the gaming community. So to say that the WoWification of the genre has been a bad thing, or has dumbed down MMOs, or is killing the genre, is completely disingenuous, as it has shown time and again in recent history, is that if you're going to make a game, you're going to make a game that is going to have mass market appeal, and basically you need games to have mass market appeal nowadays in order to remain profitable, especially if you're going to be subscription based. Then yes, you're going to have to make the content accessible. And again, that doesn't mean dumbed down. That just means it's coming in bite-sized chunks. That's what the gaming community has shown the industry that we want today. We want things in bite-sized chunks that we can sit down for a quick play session and say, I'm going to accomplish this in this hour or half hour, or even if, feeling radical a couple hours, I'm going to accomplish this and get it done. So there's plenty of good content out there. There's plenty of challenging content still out there in every game that is out there in the wild right now. So to say that, the wildification has dumbed down the genre, has harmed the genre is, complete BS. I'm going to go to a forum post here in the Star Wars The Old Republic. Yeah, so here might not be able to see that too well, but maybe you will. Anyway, this post here is in regards to the hate towards SWTOR. Why? Well, Traveler's Way here points out something that is not, points out some specifics towards Star Wars The Old Republic, but goes into the overall attitude of the gaming community itself, because you go to any gaming MMO forum, heck, any gaming forum nowadays, and there will be hate for the game, and it all basically boils down to what Traveler's Way says here. There have been plenty of good examples of why the hate is strong with the SWTOR community. I don't think there is much to be added to what has already been said in this multiple page thread. So we're, about 12 pages here at this point from, a couple of weeks ago. So where are we? What interests me is the underlying reasonings, etc., etc. A member of at least 5 dozen MMO. We may be able to boil it down to one word: entitlement. Now, of course, as Traveler's Way says here, entitlement already raises the hackles in the gaming community. Whenever somebody says the gaming portion, anybody in the gaming community is entitled. Oh no, we're not entitled. We just want reasons why you are entitled, essentially, is what is spouted out forth. So I completely agree with that entitlement. But he goes on to break it down. Well, what is this the bad entitlement? No, this is actually a good entitlement here. So we're saying, because I already mentioned that each and every gamer expects something different from their gameplay experience, hence no one game can satisfy all players. Being a gamer is an expensive hobby, indeed it is, despite the fact that the cost of games has been relatively static over the course of the last 2 decades, indeed. And the same thing with subscriptions. Subscriptions has been $15 a month for 10 years, and we know development of games has not remained what it was. $1 million spent 10 years ago is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of games. Now, $1 million will not get you anywhere in a AAA mass market MMO, yet gamers are still expecting to pay the same price, which is basically what Traveler's Way says here. The reality of the situation is that we as a gaming community have somehow come to the conclusion that every game we buy should appeal to our individual playstyle and notions of what is fun and entertaining in our games, when that is obviously an impossible task. Yes, so that's where the entitlement comes into. We buy a game, we expect we should enjoy it. That is not going to happen. But anyway, on to this problem where he gets into the wowification here. Some ideas have been put forth here that post-WoW MMOs fail because of the wowification of the genre, and that we would be better off going back to the good old days of MMO gaming, hence the EverQuest Ultima Online type days. No, that would be a complete disaster here. That may be somewhat true, well, I don't know, perhaps, but really what constitutes failure here? Clearly, when the game shuts down, it can be considered a failure, but even that, okay, he goes on to, discuss SWTOR's failure and then basically resurrection with free-to-play. Can niche games be successful? Yes, even WoW show that, yes, you can buck the trend of declining MMOs after release. There have been countless debates and studies regarding the aspects of casual and hardcore, yes, some of which they've tackled in the forums, and of course, as I mentioned, we've tackled here on Awesome Sauce for games. So wowification, that may be what constitutes failure here. That was that. I know it's in here somewhere. Place for the niche. In order to stay, here we go. It is a business in which there is cutthroat competition. In order to stay in business, the competitors must ensure that they produce products that can bring in the maximum amount of profits possible. And in today's subscription-based MMOs, that means you need to appeal to as many players as possible, because the critical mass of players that you need to remain profitable at $15 a month, a cost that has not risen, even though your development cost has risen, you need to appeal to as many games as possible, and hence the accessibility issue. You cannot appeal to that many people if you're a niche game. Therefore, you will not survive if you have very high AAA development costs. In the end, we've come to witness vast changes in the genre and the gaming industry in general, thanks in part to the shifting priorities of those who comprise the community, as we have mentioned, to whom the industry panders to, essentially. In order to remain viable and competitive, the industry must continue to follow the social trends of its audience. That trend has been and continues to be, as I mentioned, bite-sized chunks of easily accessible content. Does that come as disappointment to those old school gamers who prefer to work in their games for their accomplishments and play in a persistent world which they can consider living in the second home? He hits the nail on the head right here, or she. Of course, we must realize that without this general appeal and without this paradigm shift, and without the paradigm shifts already experienced, there wouldn't be a genre at all to play with. Has the wowification of the genre changed how we play our games? Indeed it has. It's also enabled the genre not only to continue to survive, but thrive without it. Make no mistake. The vast majority of games we would be playing today would be single-player games that may offer, just like I said, amazing. Yes, that's right, I am, of course, Traveler's Way, if you have not guessed. So yes, indeed. Basically, this is why old-school gaming in MMOs, yes, that old school gaming feel is dead. But even then, it's not really that dead, because you still have EverQuest 1 still up and running. For how long, we don't know. Because, as you know, SOE tends to be a game killer. So it's only a matter of time before they start putting the pride in their new ponies. EverQuest Next and EverQuest Landmark. And rest assured, EverQuest 1 will bite the bullet at some point as well. But again, you got plenty of old school games, you got plenty of emos. There's several Star Wars Galaxy emos out there that recapture what was great about the old game. But that brings into the question of, can you actually go back to those old games? There's an old article on Massively, in fact I'll link it in the description here, about going back to the old games and discovering the reason why it's not all it's cracked up to be. So all those longing for the old school MMOs, or the old school days of MMO gaming, obviously it was not what it was cracked up to be. The gaming community, for the most part, has matured, and with it, what we want out of our games has matured. So in the terms of old school versus new school wins out. New school has to win out if we want this genre to continue to progress, to continue to be successful. It has to remain new school, it has to remain accessible. But again, just because something is more accessible than you would prefer doesn't mean it's dumbed down. That's BS. There's still plenty of content out there for those looking for a challenge. The devs are certainly still providing content for that portion of the player base that desires challenges. It just might not be as E-peenish as you may want it, but again, that's life. Get over it. Anyway, that's all we have for this episode. Thank you for watching. Until next time, it's BJ Waller saying have fun, enjoy whatever game you may happen to enjoy, be it Elder Scrolls Online, being Star Wars The Old Republic, Guild Wars 2, even though it sucks. Oh, even if it's EverQuest 1 or SWG Emo, enjoy it for what it is. It is not dead. It is fun, and that's why we play. Until next time, I will see you in game.